Seattle City Council recently voted on a new law that would allow for prosecution of drug possession as a gross misdemeanor. What we've had is just a bunch of legislation in the state that has essentially decriminalized drugs. And now Seattle, everybody knows, hey, we got this whole fentanyl thing going on. We've got this old drug possession thing going on, and things are just kind of the Wild West. It's crazy town, right? So we're trying to come up with some legislation. Unfortunately, we've got enough knuckleheads on the Seattle City Council who voted. It was a 5-4 vote to not get tougher on drugs. Because why would we? I mean, these people are just so. Our council members are just. Yeah, some of them. We've got a couple that are decent. Vast majority are not. That's what we're getting into today is the whole, is this the war on drugs? Should we be going after diversion? Should we make it, a felony again? Is it a gross misdemeanor? All of this stuff. Meanwhile, people are dying in droves from fentanyl addiction. And what we do here in Seattle is we reimagine, we rethink, come up with laws, and then don't enact them. Yeah, wouldn't want to really do anything. Yeah, we don't want to go down that road. We need to just ponder our actions as, our fellow citizens die on the streets on the daily. That's what we're doing. Let's get into it. Here we go. After the Seattle City Council voted against an ordinance that would bring the city in line with the statewide drug law passed in May, Councilmember Sarah Nelson, Fremont Brewing, I love that company, one of the 4 council members to vote in favor of the ordinance, expressed her disbelief and disappointment in the results. I think she's on the right side of this argument. And I think you'll agree. You're reasonable. I'm reasonable. Sarah Nelson, she's one of the few reasonable council members. I mean, the fact that you can say that is a damn near a miracle. That we have got a reasonable 1 or 2 members of the city council in Seattle. I was shocked and that we did not conform Seattle Municipal Code to state law, Nelson told Jason Rants on 770 AM KTTH. And I'm framing it that way because I think that people need to realize that this was a routine measure that we were going to do. We always, after legislative sessions, modify municipal code to conform with state changes in the state criminal code. So what we had is we had the Blake case a couple of years ago where some drug-addled knucklehead said, hey, I put on this pair of pants and I didn't know that there was drugs in the pocket. I mean, only in Washington, right? Yeah, so we've had that, which basically, possession. And so drugs are basically legal in the state of Washington. We're not arresting people. We're not incarcerating people. We're not even putting people into treatment based on anything. It's a free-for-all. Let's just be honest. Seattle City Council voted 5-4 against a bill that would have given Seattle City Attorney Ann Davison, who is, good Lord, do I dare say it? She's a Republican. In Seattle? What? Seattle City Attorney Ann Davison, the authority to prosecute people for public drug use or possession. Council members Alex Peterson, Deborah Juarez, and Dan Strauss joined Nelson in voting in favor of the ordinance. So it was 4-5. So we've got 7 out of 9 of our positions in the Seattle City Council are coming up for election in this next election cycle. Will the residents of Seattle make a difference with who they bring into play? You can kind of see that we're getting closer to maybe a little bit more of a moderate position. But if you go some places in Seattle, you're like, wow, you need it because things are out of control. How about Ballard in general? Absolute dumpster fire train wreck. You just got homelessness and drugs running rampant. We've got a situation right now where we got the Major League Baseball All-Star game here in Seattle. So we are cleaning things up willy-nilly. We've asked the good citizens of Seattle, hey, could you help come clean up the city of Seattle? Because it's not looking good for a major game like that. Got the All-Star baseball game coming to town, right? Let's scooch the dead homeless people out of their tents and let's get that moved on. And let's get people moved out of the downtown core because it's not a good look, right? Just like, what did LA do? Was that for the Super Bowl? I think it was for the Super Bowl, right? Let's get some of this riffraff out of here because this isn't good for the PR of the Super Bowl. Come to LA. Super Bowl, homelessness, drug addiction, crime, right? You don't want that look. So for a weekend, you need to clean up your city and you need to get on top of it. This is not the war on drugs. I've heard from a lot of my constituents saying that this is a simple, gross misdemeanor to intervene in the most deadly drug epidemic ever to hit our streets. It should have been a given. This should have been a chip shot. This should have been a gimme. This should have been a layup. How many other different, this should have been a short punt, a 20-yard punt, just boop. That's what this should have been. But we've got council members that are, like I said, they're on the wrong side of reality. I hate to say it, but this is that's who citizens of Seattle voted in. That's what Seattle likes. Seattle, we love drugs. Drugs are good. There's no such thing as a bad drug. Come on now. And then we wonder, why are all these people dying on the sidewalk? What's going on? We got fires galore. Cities covered in graffiti. So how did this happen? Well, it happens because of stuff like this, where that chip shot just doesn't happen, right? I feel that the comparison between this legislation, which was supposed to match up Seattle municipal code to state law, right? That's what it was supposed to do. I feel that the comparison between this legislation, which is simply conforming to state law, and the war on drugs is just simply misguided and doesn't take into account the fact that this is real and it's simply a tool we are trying to use as a tool to get people into treatment. So the ability to make what are now misdemeanors, I believe, into gross misdemeanors, whereas for the last, 50 years, they've been felonies. So we got away from that whole felony thing, right? How's that working out for us? Yeah. Have drug abuse, drug addiction, drug deaths due to overdose, have those retreated? Have those numbers gone down? No, it's gone wildly the wrong direction. Wildly the wrong direction. You want to go to what should be one of Seattle's oldest and coolest neighborhoods, which is Pioneer Square. It is invariably a train wreck of, homeless folks, drug addicts, drug dealers, just shenanigans, right? Shenanigans. The area south of the Kingdom, Soto district, you got a lot of shenanigans going on. The International District in Seattle. Yeah, man, that is just overrun with silliness. I mean, it's horrible. It's horrible for those community members. Councilmember Andrew Lewis said that he planned to vote for the measure, but decided against it, stating the issue required further discussion in committee before being voted into law. He needed more reimagine and rethink time. We need to analyze this a little more. We need to really come up with something that we can all agree on. And that's what happens in Seattle. You just got a bunch of politicians that are, we can't really work out what we got going on here. Lewis was the deciding vote in the decision, with Nelson claiming he failed the constituents of District 7, which includes South Lake Union, Pioneer Square, and downtown. Yeah, I would say that is true. I would 100% agree with that. Now, they'll get something going, but the bottom line is are we really going to start throwing people in jail for drug possession here in Seattle? Are we going to start, going against that? Are we going to fine people? Are we really going to put people into diversion programs? It seems like so many of these cases that come up, yeah, he was given diversion. He didn't have to go to jail, but he had to go to treatment. But he never showed up for treatment. And then he went out and committed another crime. We see that time and time and time again. Because to me, the whole diversion thing, going into treatment, maybe that works for a small percentage. Man, for the vast majority, I think, we've got a different generation of drug addicts on the streets now. Let's just be honest. It's a different generation. This isn't the hobos that, we used to talk about who had a drinking problem. This is straight up drugs, straight up heavy duty narcotics that kill people on the regular. Well, this is just a shocking dereliction of duty on the part of the city council, Nelson said on the G and Ursula show. And it's especially disappointing that downtown's representative just abandoned downtown. And I don't know what his plan is. The rest of us don't either. I think more reimagining and rethinking is the plan. Not a lot of action. That's what we're saying. Councilmember Andrew Lewis released a statement following the city council vote explaining that he was unsure of giving the prosecutorial discretion of drug cases to the city's attorney office, especially with a lack of clear diversion programs. You know what? If somebody's willing to take a whack at it and make it work, I say let them go for it. Let them go for it, because at least they're doing something. Now, the other issue is, so King County basically handles felony cases, right? But they also handle basically all drug cases. City of Seattle does not have a drug court. Don't have one. King County does. So you've got like resource issues as well. But I thought this law I thought this would have been a good case of, all right, let's at least get things in line, even though we don't have the manpower to run Seattle City Drug Court. We'd at least get our Seattle City legislation and policy basically in line with the state. So I will propose legislation that adopts the legislature's Blake fix fully. That's I got drugs in my pocket. Good Lord, how did they get there? How did those drugs magically jump in oh, wait a minute. I wasn't wearing my pants. These are somebody else's pants. Throw that person in jail. Throw them in jail. I don't care. Once I know that we've answered the key question of what happens to people if they are charged under its powers, Lewis said, the people of Seattle deserve a public and open discussion for how we're going to help our neighbors suffering from addiction. But you got to drop the hammer either on putting them in treatment or in jail. Take your pick. And you can't just let them live willy-nilly, but you already have. It's kind of like down in Portland. They've enacted the no outdoor urban camping between 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. If you do, we might throw you in jail for 30 days or fine you $100. That's going nowhere. They deserve to see us deliberate on the plan for enforcement and the plan for treatment. Seattle politicians love to do a lot of talking and reimagining and rethinking, but not actual doing. Not actual doing. We don't want to have anything positive move forward here, right? And in the meantime, it's all this policy that's just created such a dumpster fire in our state. And look at our state versus other states that have we're not so down on drugs. We're not as much. Not so much. We're not decriminalizing drugs, and then we're not decriminalizing the activities that pay for said drugs, because it's the whole ecosystem thing, right? Lewis said, and he's the guy that said, no, we need to reimagine, rethink. Lewis said that he wants to work to develop a successor to the community court, develop and fully fund treatment-based pre-file diversion, and only after proposed legislation making the municipal code consistent with state law on possession and public use. Which comes first, the chicken or the egg, right? I mean, drug possession and public drug use is still illegal in Seattle and will remain illegal, the Seattle City Council stated in a fact sheet press release after the city council meeting concluded. Really? Really? I defy you to go to the Blade, 3rd and Pike, 3rd and Pine, that whole section, and you tell me if drugs are illegal in Seattle. I defy you to go to South Jackson Street and 12th Avenue South and tell me that drugs are illegal in Seattle. You got open air drug markets. They're just running willy-nilly. It's illegal. Look at the proof in the pudding, right? Seattle Police Department still has the power to arrest people for breaking Washington state drug laws. King County Prosecuting Attorney's Office will still have the power to prosecute people for breaking Washington state drugs laws. Despite Seattle police officers having the ability to still arrest people for drug possession or public drug use, and the King counties still can do those, the Seattle City Attorney's Office does not have unprecedented power to prosecute drug possession crimes, something that has traditionally been the responsibility of the King County Prosecuting Attorney's Office. And it was also felonies. There were felonies, not a gross misdemeanor. Hey, here's your parking ticket. Here's your really expensive parking ticket. We're going to throw you in jail. That's, I know it's your 100th time, but we're still threatening you with jail time. Seattle will now be the only municipality in the state where it is legal to use hard drugs in public. This is what the Seattle City Attorney Davison wrote in a statement after the ordinance failed, a sentiment which was later challenged by Councilmember Lisa Herbold. City Attorney Davison's outrageous statement that Seattle will now be the only municipality in the state of Washington where it's legal to use hard drugs in public is an inexcusable mischaracterization of the law. Is it? I don't think it is. I think that's exactly what it is. Again, that's just my opinion. This is what Herbold wrote in a press release. The Washington State Bar, okay, she gets into professional conduct. You said something I didn't like, so it must be bad. So, and her comeback for that is, like this letter from more than 100 doctors calls for, we must, instead of peddling false claims, enact smart, data-proven policy that will achieve our intended goals, not naive, reactive, and harmful policy that repeats the mistakes of the past. And that is how we end up with no policy at all, and things continue to slide in the wrong direction. That's how you get there. You have knuckle-headed city council members. I mean, everybody knows it. Everybody already knows that Seattle's just, but this is what Seattle wants too. So you got to understand, give the people what they want. Give them that dumpster fire. Get out the popcorn. Enjoy the decline. All things that we talk about here pretty consistently, right? So King County's role in prosecuting. So you've got this state law, you got the county law, county responsibility, you've got city law. All of this stuff comes into play. And at the end of the day, it feels like in Seattle, we just let it rip. It's like, drugs are good. It's fine. Do your drugs. We won't bother you about them. With the need for a new Seattle City ordinance to allow the city's attorney's office to take action against misdemeanor and gross misdemeanor cases, which used to be felonies within Seattle city limits, some leaders and representatives have pondered if King County could step in through an agreement between the city and its county, a notion quickly dismissed by King County Prosecuting Attorney Lisa Mannion. There's an incorrect notion that misdemeanor drug possession or public use cases falling within Seattle city limits can simply be referred to King County to handle as contracted services. So we go into this whole thing of, I don't have funding, don't have, this entity doesn't have the manpower, this entity doesn't do this. I can think of no precedent where a contract for prosecutions, okay. You just get stuck in a bunch of weeds, right? Nelson doubled down on Mannion's comments, believing this is a Seattle problem. So much of what we see in Seattle is a Seattle problem. That is why I live and work in Bellevue. But there's some really cool stuff in Seattle I like to go and do. So I kind of tolerate all this nonsense. The open air drug use, the crime, having your car broken into. I worry every single time I'm over in Seattle. Well, is this the time my car's going to get broken into? And, knock on wood, I haven't really had any problems. When I lived in Seattle as a college student, I never really had any problems. It's just, I guess I've gotten lucky, right? So I don't live over there, but I spend a fair amount of time there and I see the issues. I mean, you pull up to the main Mercer Street on-ramp, off-ramp. That's the main, arterial off of I-5 into downtown Seattle. You got a bunch of graffiti. You got this homeless encampment right there. That's where you got the structure, the framed up structure with the composition roof. And, it's all just, it's framed up and the guy found the materials from the dumpster. Right. Okay. And somebody had murdered a woman and left her in that encampment and they found her and it's like, oh, hey, another dead body in an encampment. Yeah, good for Seattle. Go Seattle. So Nelson doubled down. It's a Seattle problem. We cannot send these to the county, Nelson continued on the G and Ursula show. And there's even a question about whether or not the Seattle department can make arrests on this issue. Yeah. I mean, because we haven't squared away the Seattle city law with the state law. Not that we want people to go to jail. I remind folks, but this is a Seattle problem, and we just gave up on trying to solve it because that would have been a tool to handle some of what we got going on. No, Seattle can't arrest its way out of this. No, Seattle's not going to force people to go into treatment. And for that reason, I think long term, this problem is going to be around for a long, long time. You're not going to clean the streets up. You are not going to clean the homelessness issue up. You're not going to clean up the crime issues that you've got going on. So, we kind of keep, and then we go into Seattle Police Department says, this is a train wreck. And, totally agree. And it is. Some groups have pushed back against the narrative that, drugs are bad. We should just let everybody just do their drugs and that kind of thing. So Seattle Mayor Bruce Harrell told Cairo News Radio today he plans to sit down with community leaders and the city council to craft new legislation before the end of the month. Bruce Harrell, I think he gets it. I really do. I honestly do. Yeah, he can't do everything, but he has been working those sweeps like there's no tomorrow. I think he's doing what he can do. I know you might not agree with me, but he's doing something. And he consistently comes to the table and says, all right, we got to do something here. And, in today's world in Seattle, which has just been an absolute train wreck to the far left, it's about as good as you're going to do, right? Somebody that's moderate, that actually has, okay, they understand, all right, yeah, we got some issues with the little drug possession going on. Let's figure something out. Let's get something on the books. Let's get going. But even if this law does change, what about all those addicts in Seattle that have come to Seattle specifically for the lifestyle? That's where I kind of go, all right, you change the laws. Okay. Is that gonna move the needle that much? Like the camping ban in Portland between 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. Is that really going to move the needle that much? In Portland's defense, which isn't a defense at all, things have gotten so bad there as far as the urban camping. They just had to throw something on the books. All right, we got to do something. What can we get done? All right, no more camping between and you can't camp here. You can't camp there. You can have the cops enforce that. You can have the cops enforce this. Which court system are you going to have, enforcing it? Are we just all of a sudden going to go to a system where we're incarcerating people left and right for simple drug possession? I don't think so. But I think long term, this would have been a step in the right direction. It would have been at least okay, we recognize we got a major issue going on here. This kind of matches up city with state. All right, let's head down that road. But instead, we just did a bunch of this. Let's think about it a little bit more. Because, thinking really gets things going in the right direction, right? I get so tired of that. It's like, just pull the trigger on something. But that's not what we're doing here in Seattle. And that's not what most West Coast cities are doing. They're not pulling the trigger on something that will actually have an impact on daily life and things down the road, cleaning up the streets. No, we want to try all these things and we want to be inclusive and we want everything to be equitable and all this just crazy talk. And it's like, hey, people are doing a whole bunch of drugs and they're killing themselves. What are you going to do about that? Well, yeah, harm reduction says that you got to let people do their drugs. All right. How's that working out? It's not all that great, is it? No. So I don't do a lot of Seattle stuff anymore just because Seattle to me is like, what are you guys even doing? What are you even doing? But again, you got to remember, this is what the people of Seattle wanted. This kind of stuff. Let's think about it some more. Let's come up with some different policy. In the meantime, we'll just have this quagmire of, which entity has responsibility. And in the end, nobody takes responsibility, right? Because you don't have any laws on the books that make sense. And that is strictly city of Seattle. That's what you've got going on. I do agree with that statement that this is a Seattle. This is strictly a Seattle deal because we've got such a bunch of knuckleheaded Seattle City Council members. Here's your sign, right? Here's your sign. All right. That's it for me. Thanks so much for being here. Love to have you subscribe if you haven't already. Hit that notification bell. Check out Reasonable Plus on Discord. Check out reasonabletv.com. That's our private subscription channel. And I will see you on the next one. Bye for now.